Well, I want to welcome you in this morning. If I haven't met you yet, my name is James Yandell, and I'm the executive pastor here at New Day Church. And it is really good to be here in Houston with my family. Over the past few weeks, we have been in New Day Magnolia, helping that church as we seek to plant it early next year. And it's been really good to meet with them, but it's also really good to be here. We're in the middle of a series called Better Together. And it's more than just a sermon series in which we're going over Romans 12, but it's an idea. It's a concept. It's something that we truly believe in here at New Day Church, that we are better together. We have so many things going on, like a backpack drive and group sign up and outreach events coming up, and we're gathering together here as a church, and all those things are good and what we mean by better together, but it's even deeper than that. It is a conviction. A biblical conviction that Christ has made us into a family and that we are better together. I want you to indulge me here a little bit this morning, and I want to walk you through just this image, this picture. If you want to close your eyes, you can totally do that, but I want to walk us just through it here this morning. I want you to imagine with me that you are journeying down a road. And you're going down this road and you have traveled for a long, long time. You got a lot of road behind you, but you got a lot of road ahead of you as well. And you're with your family on this journey and on this road, and you're worried about them. You want them to be safe, happy, at peace on this journey. And a little bit ahead, you see a town as you travel, and you see this town, and just imagine there's no GPS, there's no internet. We're back in the olden days, right? So you're traveling into this town, and it's night outside. It's dark, it's dangerous, and you're far from home. And you enter into this town, and as you enter into the town, it's also dark. No lights up, streets are empty. Doors are closed, shuttered, locked, the blinds are pulled down, and closed signs are over all the doors. But you got to have a place to stay tonight, right? So you continue down the journey in this town, and you go by street after street after street, and all the houses are dark, empty, and locked. Until in the distance, as you turn down one street, at the end of the street, at the end of the cul-de-sac, there's a light. And you see that light in the distance, and it's not a bright light. I mean, it's not the sun. It's not a bright light. It's just a light. But in this darkness, it is so bright, so compelling, and it draws you to it. So you take your family and you continue down this road, and you come closer to the light, and you find it is a porch light of a house. And you go to this house, middle of the night, and you knock on the door. The sweet couple opens the door, and you share that you're on a journey and you need a place to stay. And they let you in, and they say, our house is your house, and our kitchen is your kitchen, and our guest room is your guest room. Stay as long as you need to. We can all kind of relate to that story because we've all been on long journeys before, and we know what it's like to be tired and in need of a place to stay far from home. And we also know what it's like because we're all on this journey. A long, long journey through life on a hard and difficult road. If you were to tell me how hard and difficult and painstaking life can be when I was 15, man, I wouldn't believe you. But it is hard. And there is trouble and toil and snares on this road. And I wonder, as we journey on this road, do you understand the importance of what it means for us to have a home? We all know that to be home is to be safe. To be home is to be well fed. To be home is to be warm. To be home is a place of comfort where we can let our guard down and where we can be ourselves, where we feel safe with people that we love. We all understand that concept. And in the spiritual journey that we're on in life, we're asking the question, I'm sure there are people here asking the question as you enter into this church today, is this church home? And I want to answer that question. Biblically, yes, the church is home. We are called to be a home for ourselves and for the people around us. Church is not a building. The church is a spiritual family. Theologically and biblically, when Jesus died for our sins and when we invite him into our life, what we are doing is we are joining into a spiritual family that calls us and has us as a spiritual home as we meet together and as we get to know each other and as we help each other out in this life. We are a spiritual home for one another. The problem is, for many of us, here's the tension. We like to practically live our life as though we don't have a spiritual family. We like to have our faith as though it is private and personal. But when I look at the scriptures, and especially as I look in Romans 12, which we're going to be in today, I don't see anything about a private, personal walk with God. I see page after page after page in the Bible of a spiritual people who God is talking to in plurality, becoming more and more like Jesus together. This is the image that we have in the Bible and what we're called to do together. The church is a home, a spiritual family, and we're called to live in and press in and act as this family. I'm going to give you a stat this morning. So I'm the executive pastor, meaning I'm not good with math, but I am good kind of with numbers. And so I am over kind of all of our administration, over our groups and teams and participation. And I've been tracking kind of participation at New Day over, the past 3 or 4 years. And I've noticed some encouraging stats, but also a very interesting stat about how people connect into small group community life at New Day. The first year I began tracking was about 2017, and I did some stats, and I found that 50% of people who attended New Day, attended the church, were participating in small group community life. So half the people who came on a Sunday morning would take that step to enter into smaller community, whether that was a Sunday morning class or a midweek community group that meets in a home. That number was 50. The next year that I checked it, the number had actually gone up to 60. I was very encouraged by that, right? 60% of the people who come on Sunday morning are participating in small group community life. The next year I checked it, it was 70%. I was encouraged by that. But then the next year I checked it, it was again at 70%. And then the last semester that I checked it, it was again at 70%. So that means 70% of the people who participate in Sunday morning take a step in their faith journey, in their spiritual walk to say, you know what, I'm going to step into small group community life. And there's a lot of reasons why we might not step into small group community life, and I'm going to talk about some of those, some very legit reasons, like I am busy. That's a legit reason, but I want to talk about that a little bit this morning and why maybe the priorities we place aren't truly the priorities we should place in our life. So there's legit reasons not to step into community life. But what I want to do this morning, and this is a message for all of us, but especially for the 30% in this room that may be on the fence about taking a step beyond Sunday morning, I want to talk to you this morning. I want to appeal to you. Listen, I'm not your financial advisor. I can't help you with your money. I'm not a fitness coach, I don't even really work out myself. I can't help you out with that. I'm a pastor. And my heart is that you would be spiritually healthy and mature, and that your faith would not blow up on this really, really long journey that we have in this life toward Christ. That's what I can do this morning. And so as I talk, I'm thinking about your spiritual health, your spiritual vitality, your walk. Man, there's been a secret that we found at New Day that those who don't take that step, who keep their walk with God just to Sunday morning, but never find that community of people who are walking with Jesus together, those are people who are at a high flight risk to not coming to church anymore. And they stick with us for a while, and they stick with us, but then they float off. And I wish I could tell you that they float off and they go to another church and they live deeply vibrant, spiritually healthy lives, but as I stay connected to them, I find that that is not the case. That there's something about getting around in a small group, being known and knowing other people that is vital for your perseverance in your walk with Jesus in this life. So I want to talk to you, the 30% who may be on the fence this morning. We're going to be in Romans chapter 12, starting in verse 9, going through verses 13. And I'm going to invite you at this time to open up with me. And then also, if you would, if you're able, would you stand with me as we read these few short verses? And I'm going to read them slow because every one of these words matters. This is God's word to you, to us. Romans 12, verse 9. Let love be genuine. Abhor what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not be slothful in zeal. Be fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints, and seek to show hospitality, or your version might say, and pursue hospitality. This is God's word over us. You can be seated at this time. You know, some verses in the Bible are really difficult to understand. We've been going through Revelation and just finished a Revelation series in our Sunday morning deep dive, and those are some verses that are really, really hard to understand. Some verses in the Bible are not hard to understand. And these are some of those verses. What's hard about these verses is that they are difficult to apply, and they are impossible to apply on your own. They're difficult to apply with other people, and they are impossible to apply on your own. And so that's why this chapter begins with verse 1 and 2, which says, be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world. We have to have our minds transformed by passages like this so that we might seek and obey Christ together. Romans 12 is all about how Jesus has worked in your life. Jesus has saved you by faith, by the cross, and then now in the rest of Romans chapter 12, we're working that out. What does that mean in my life? And this transformation that we're talking about, this renewal of the mind, is not just in your mind or in your home, it's all of your life. And so Romans 12 is working out, what does it mean to be a faithful follower of Jesus who has been transformed by the gospel? Conforming to the pattern of this world means isolation. Conforming to this pattern of this world is hypocrisy. Conforming to the pattern of this world is not holding fast to good, but capitulating to what's evil and to what tempts us. Conforming to the pattern of this world is not brotherly affection. It's not showing honor. That is not a pattern of this world. Not a pattern of social media, not a pattern of the news. But to be transformed by Christ means that we are a different kind of people. So what I want to do this morning, and I'm talking to all of us, but I'm also talking to the 30% in this room for reasons why I believe that you need to be in community that is vital for you in your life. And the first one comes out of verse 9, that first sentence, let love be genuine. Let love be genuine, literally without hypocrisy. And I think this is a really important exhortation because I think Paul, who's the writer of this chapter, is really hitting at something that's deep, deep in the human heart, and that is a feeling for a need for hypocrisy. There's something about the human heart, because we are broken, and all the way back from the beginning, that causes us to want us to try to hide who we really are and what we're really going through and what we're really struggling with. There's a propensity in the human heart for us to not be genuine, but to be hypocritical about the way that we look at people or the way that we present ourselves to the world. And we know social media contributes to this. Like we find it hard to get into real community because we are deeply committed to counterfeit community, right? And the world is a counterfeit community of people who curate an image and put it forward and say, this is who I am. But inside, I'm really hurting and I'm someone very different from who I am portraying to the world. And what we find is the longer that we do that, the longer that this image is put forth, and the bigger the gap between this image and who I really am, we find that we can't hold that our whole life. And so we end up crashing or burning out or walking away from the faith or just compromising into moral failure because we can't keep that gap up. We feel this need for hypocrisy, this need to put forth an image. But I believe that even though we're scared to get into small group because then we begin to get revealed and known, I believe that the need for hypocrisy actually dies in the living room, in the small group. There's no more need for hypocrisy when we're in real community with people who are also sinful and broken and have their own messed up issues. And I can remember, let me give you a quick story. I can remember the first time Sarah and I ever hosted a small group. We were excited to buy a house in Oak Forest. Finally, we're able to do that after saving up. And we got our house, and we were like, you know what? We got this house because we want to open a small group in our home. And we had all the same fears that I'm sure all of our other small group leaders have. Fears like, you know what, our house is too small, or, you know, is it going to be the perfect place, or all this kind of stuff. And we had all those fears. And I remember the week leading up to the first small group that we ever hosted, I remember I spent basically that entire week, every evening that week, deep cleaning our house. All right. You know, if you've had people over, especially if you hosted a group before, you know, you feel that need so deeply. I cannot tell you, I cleaned in rooms that no one was even going to go into. I pulled the fridge out and cleaned, you know, the Cheez-It crumbs underneath just in case someone like tripped and their phone goes behind, you know. Vacuumed under the couch cushions. Oh man, that was a rough week. And then the next week I did it again. And the next week I did it again. But by week 4, I stopped doing it. And I started straightening up. And I share that story because I feel like it's a great analogy for all of us as we begin to think about getting into small group community, or we start getting into this idea of, I don't want to be known. We begin by trying to curate a perfect image for the people around us. And it's like, I want people to think this is how our home is all the time, when in reality, it is not like that all the time, right? We're stepping on Legos, hurting ourselves, all that stuff. You can't keep that up. And I believe that week 3 or week 4 of our group was so much better because I was so much more relaxed and saying, hey, this is who I am. And yeah, I'm going to clean up the underwear because that's like gross or whatever, but everything else, like this is us. This is what a weeknight is like for us. And I think even something that simple helped me to make that switch and be like, you know what, like none of these people have their marriages perfectly together. None of these people have their parenting together. None of these people have their personal walk with Jesus. No one feels like a prayer warrior or that they're perfectly perfect in the Lord or following him perfectly. That in fact, the need for hypocrisy dies in these communities. Small group is a place where you can feel comfortable about who you are and who you're becoming in Jesus, right? Something that we do in our small groups is, we kind of go over a Bible passage, but we ask, how are you doing, really? How are you doing really? What are you struggling with, man? What's hard about your parenting right there now? Hard about your marriage? And that aspect of groups, I believe, is one of the most important and one of the most fulfilling as we get together and as we get to know one another. This is great. We need this. We need someone expositing the word. We need music to pump us up, but we need a community who knows where we're at this week right now. We need that. And we need that in community. Imagine if right now I just picked at random and I just pointed to someone in the crowd. I was like, come on down, like a game show, come on down. And they come up with me and I'm like, hey man, what's your biggest struggle this week? What sin are you struggling with this week? Everyone's terrified I'm going to do that, right? What's your biggest struggle, man? Let's talk about it. It's wrong avenue. Small groups are where we actually are known and where we actually change. Small groups allow you to search and ask questions about Jesus that you may not feel comfortable with in a big setting like this, where everyone kind of postures and says, I got it all together, or at least I look like I have it all together, or I don't have any doubts about Jesus or my faith. Small group is where we ask those questions and where we journey together. Small groups provide a comfortable atmosphere for openness. Even in our group, we made a switch where, we meet together in a living room and all of us are together sharing a meal together, and then we split up, guys and girls, more comfortable that way. Let's talk about what's going on in our marriage. Let's talk about what's going on in our lives and at work. And for some guys in the room, this sounds really, really hard. It's because you're deeply committed to a counterfeit community, or you're deeply committed or addicted to isolation. And the Bible presents a different picture, not a private, personal faith, but a faith that's in community with other people. We know homes are meant to be a comfortable place, a place where we're comfortable and open and warm and fed and with people that we love. Church is home, and one way that we live that out is we meet in homes or in small groups, and we talk about what's going on in our life. So I believe first reason you should get in small group is because it kills the need for hypocrisy in your life. You're going to find as you get to know real people that you don't got to posture anymore, that they got stuff going on in their life just like you do. Man, sometimes our group, probably more often than not, just delves into how hard parenting is and how bad of parents we all feel. But we do it together. Look at verses 10 and 11. So it starts in 9, let love be genuine, but then goes on in verse 10, love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not be slothful in zeal, be fervent in spirit, and serve the Lord. And this is important because Paul is telling us to love one another with a brotherly affection. In the first verse, it says, let love be genuine. The word that Paul uses is agape, which is the kind of love that God has for us. But then in this verse, Paul uses this idea of brotherly love, a close affection, a known and a be known kind of love. And it says to take that love and outdo one another in showing honor. And so Paul is essentially exhorting us to love others as we love ourselves. And this is one of the... This is going to be tricky because I don't want to sound judgmental because I'm kind of a loner myself, but I'm just going to say it. Indifference toward the community of people is literally the opposite of love. We think hate is the opposite of love. No, hate is not the opposite of love. Indifference is the opposite of love. And when we see our faith as primarily just about ourselves and our own spiritual journey, and we do that and we pursue that at the expense of the community, we're doing the opposite of love. That we are called to love one another with a brotherly affection. The problem is when you begin to love real people, you find real people are difficult, hard to lead, hard to love, have issues in their life, are inconsistent with their spiritual walk. And so part of loving real people is setting aside, first, an ignorance or an indifference toward community, but two, setting aside our idealized vision of who people actually are. I love Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who wrote an awesome book. He's a German pastor who resisted Adolf Hitler in Nazi Germany. He wrote an awesome book called Life Together, and he has this quote. He says, "The person who loves their dream of community will destroy community, but the person who loves those around them will create community." What that means is, if you have an expectation on the people around you that they cannot live up to, then you will naturally pull away from them and destroy community in your life. You will have no community. And I know, especially men, who have done that. The church has wronged them, people have wronged them, their family has wronged them, and they have no community. But Dietrich Bonhoeffer says that's true on the other side as well. Those who love the imperfect people around them actually create community for themselves. We're not called to be indifferent toward the community. We're called to love them. We're not called to be a people who just hear the Bible, hear what it says, hear what it says, hear what it says, but then don't live it out. Let me give you a quick illustration. I didn't plan on doing this, but I just want to share this morning. So we got a janky printer at the church. And this morning, I was trying to print my sermon because I was a little bit behind. So you see it did get printed. I was trying to print my sermon, and it kept saying, could not connect to printer. Which I don't know if you've been there before under an urgent situation, but it is frustrating. And it wasn't just me. There was actually 4 people lined up in the printer room behind me this morning, all lined up because none of their stuff would print. Everybody's in there. I don't know, it's not connected, whatever. Information is going in. Pages are not coming out. Information about love and how to love and how you're supposed to do it is going in, but it's not coming out. Love one another with brotherly affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. You can't be affectionate towards someone you don't know or you're not around. And the greatest honor you can show is when you actually know someone and you honor them despite their flaws. And I heard a great quote, all healthy relationships have one thing in common, honor. So we're not called to be indifferent toward community. We're called to press in and to make our lives not about ourselves, but about other people. Let's look at some of these last verses. Verse 12, rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in tribulation. Be constant in prayer. You know how you do that? It sounds hard to make that a pattern of your life. You know how you do that? We do that together. We rejoice in hope together. We can have patience in tribulation when we are together. We will be constant in prayer together. We forget that the Bible, more often than not, is not talking to you singularly. It's talking to us in a plurality. We do this together. We don't do it alone. I got a quick illustration. Has anyone ever seen the TV series Alone? Has anyone watched that series before? We got a couple people. Go watch it. It's on Discovery. It's really, really good. The concept of the series is they take people who are survivalists and they put them in a very difficult location like Patagonia or like northern Canada where it gets like literally, like I get cold in the 50s, like it gets negative 20 where these people are at. I cannot fathom a cold like that, right? So they go off into these places and they try to survive in extreme environments, and the prize is $500,000. For some of them, if you can go a certain amount of time, the prize is $1 million. So these people are motivated to get to the end and be the last person standing. There's 10 contestants. You got to be the last person standing in the series in order to win the prize. What's really interesting is that most people, I would say like most winners, make it into the 75-day range, and then for many of them, they can't make it longer after that. And it's not because of lack of food, it's not because living in a tent is the hardest, it's the being alone and the isolation that ultimately gets to people. This is what one of the contestants said after being on the show. He said, being alone meant that the brain never shut down. I was always thinking ahead, always planning, always second-guessing myself. Being alone meant there was more time for self-talk and criticism, and there was no other voice to listen to for comfort. How many of us are trying to see how many days we can make it alone? Trying to pray on our own, trying to have hope on our own, trying to stay faithful to Christ on our own. Man, these people are motivated by $500,000 to make it, and they still can't make it. Our motivation is an eternal prize in Christ. And wouldn't you do anything to win that prize? And Christ says you do that by doing it together. Man, we've had times, and I've been in small groups where things have come up. Death in the family, miscarriage, sickness. These things come up in community life. And when they come up in our life, we're thankful because people around us are praying for us and they know what we're going through and they love us and they do meal trains for us. And when we participate in community life, we hear about what happens to people in our group, and we're not just texting them from afar, hey, praying for you, but we're actually loving them week in and week out as they go through what they're going through. I believe this is what Paul has in mind. We're not called to do it alone. We're called to do it with other people. And not just these commands, but every command in the Bible we're called to do together. I call this Real Talk James Talk. This is Real Talk James Talk. All right. There's a lot of commands in the New Testament. Most of them are centered around love, and they're just extensions of that, but there are a lot of commands in the New Testament. So any NTJs in here? Know your Myers-Briggs? Any NTJs? People who just really like the practical? Okay. Being in a small group is literally one of the most efficient ways that you can follow Christ. This is how my brain works, all right? You can take the 100+ commands in the New Testament about loving others and doing this and don't neglect to meet with other people. You can take all those commands and you can try to do those on your own week in and week out, print them out, put them on your mirror, try to follow them by yourself. Or you can get in a small group community life, and those things naturally happen. It is literally the most efficient way, I believe, to love others and to follow Christ. That's just how my mind works. Discipline yourself to obey 30 to 100 commands, or get in a group and do it naturally because of the environment. The soil of the group creates this kind of environment. But you got to change. You have to change from the pattern of this world. I love this Albert Einstein quote: without changing our pattern of thought, we will not be able to solve the problems we created with our current patterns of thought. That's what Romans 12 is about. Just really quickly, here are some of the commands we obey in community. List some of them on the screen. We comfort one another, we agree with one another, we live at peace with one another, we greet one another, we bear with one another, we encourage one another, we build one another up, we don't grumble against one another, we don't speak against evil against one another, because we're living in community. We're fulfilling all these commands as we do this together. Quick illustration before we close. We got a backpack drive going on for some students, some Afghan refugee students who are in our community. And I was very thankful. Basically, everyone that we needed to get a backpack for is going to get a backpack, which is just phenomenal and awesome. And Pastor John will share about that in a moment. But we got a card as well, my family. And I didn't bring the card with me, but I was thinking about this. Man, everyone is happy to let others think that they're a genuinely loving person, right? We're all happy to let others think that we're a loving person, or loving people. And I'm happy to let you think that I'm someone who would grab a card and go get backpacks for kids because I love them. I'm happy to let you think that, even if I don't actually do it. What the scripture does and what small group community life does is that it's the follow-through component of following Jesus. We all talk about organic community. That doesn't happen. This idea of structured community is what helps us to actually follow Christ together. And just a word on the backpack thing. So I didn't even get ours. Sarah did that with Oliver on her own. So honor Sarah this morning. And it was a lot for her to go do that. So I'm happy to let you guys know she is a very loving person. That wasn't me. We actually live this out by doing it together. Look at our last verse. Verse 13. Contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality. Contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality. Pursue hospitality. At the beginning, I talked about how people are searching for home. People want to know, is the church home? Am I safe in this family? Is this a family that's going to meet my needs and walk with me spiritually through the hard seasons of life? People are asking that question. And if we're not training ourselves to be a community of people who are pursuing hospitality, pursuing community, then the answer that person has in their mind, is this place home? The answer is no. They're going to go on to another place in which they do find that. So my challenge for you, to the 100% and to the 30%, how do you respond? Like, it's very simple. You sign up for a small group and you invite others to join you in it. The world is full of people who are lonely, who are lost, who are looking for spiritual family. And we are called to be a people who are saying, this is home. So we draw to a close this morning. I don't want to lie and say it's not a challenge. Community life is challenging. It's not always life-giving, or it doesn't always feel life-giving. Let me give you a quick example. I'll never forget the rawest and real moment that I've ever been in small group life was when we were meeting one time, and if you don't know anything about my group, we got a lot of young kids in our group, and so we've got 6 kids running around in the 2 to 5 range, and so they're just loud, they're doing stuff. We didn't have a babysitter that week, and so it was just crazy town in this place. And I'll never forget what my small group leader said. She's like, guys, can I just stop? This is not life-giving to me. And it was like, oh, what? But I love that moment. That is my favorite moment of small group life that I have probably ever been in, because it was the realest moment. That was a moment in which someone was like, you know what? This isn't life-giving. Let's talk about it. I want this to be life-giving. How do we do that together? I love that, because that's what groups are about. Community life is hard. And it doesn't just happen, it has to be chosen. You have to choose community. And sometimes you have to choose community at the expense of something else. But I believe that if you want to be someone who follows after Christ, that we have to do this together. In the early days of following Jesus, hospitality was so important because the roads were dangerous, there were thieves, there were a lot of problems on the roads. And in the same day, community life is important in our day because the road is hard and the road is difficult. So I wonder this morning, in the same way that God adopts us, will we adopt other people? Will you be willing to adopt other people into your home and into your life? Will we do that together? It's very simple. All you got to do at the end of the service is go back to this table, write your name down. Someone will contact you this week. I believe that this is one of the most important aspects of following Jesus, is doing it together. To adopt one another and to show the world that there is a different kind of way. God built a home for us in himself. He adopted us, and we are called to build homes for one another and to adopt one another.